The Yakuza, or Like a Dragon series of games, are one of the few game franchises that have been consistently good. I've played all the ones released in English and I've enjoyed them all, except for Dead Cells. That was fun. And since 3 were announced recently, it's like my birthday. Anyway, Ishin comes out tomorrow, so it's time. We need to talk about the Yakuza games. Before we begin, yes, I'll be using the terms Like a Dragon and Yakuza interchangeably. Deal with it. Before I go into the bad, I'm going to talk about one of the things that makes these games special, namely, how the Like a Dragon games redefine the open world. There are a lot of open world games out there, more and more all the time, but a lot of them are populated with the same old, same old. Oh, look, a race. Oh, look, a collectible. Oh, look. While these things can and do exist in the Yakuza games, they feel a lot more lived in. Races are hidden in certain shops, and they always have something crazy or unique about them. Hidden objects are exactly that, hidden, and you don't end up with a giant map full of hot, boring garbage. Instead, you get optional minigames, including actual old Sega arcade games like Space Harrier, and betting on super complex Japanese games that have rules that make my brain weep out of my ears. But the main things that make the Like a Dragon games so different are the size of the map and the sub-stories. The map found in most Yakuza games, which is the fictional Tokyo district of Kamurocho, can be run across in a few minutes, and it's the same map in most games. You might think that's a negative, but it's actually the opposite. I probably know the map of Kamurocho as well as the map of my own town, and seeing it change organically from game to game like a real town is a joy. Oh, that's a new shop. Oh, I wonder what happened to that highball bar. More importantly, where's my favourite beef bowl bar gone? Oh god, that was there for about 40 years. Was it the economy? It's just like moving away from a city for a few years and coming back to your old haunts to find everything is at least subtly different, if not really different. It's actually a wonderful and brave choice that pays off and makes it feel like a homecoming every time a new game is released. It was really nice to see this happen with Yokohama too in Lost Judgment after Like a Dragon 7, showing they're still committed to the idea. I also loved that they realised Yokohama was bigger, so they needed to speed things up. Did they give Yagami a car? No. A skateboard. You gotta love it. A lot of games could learn from this, but they don't. Having repeated maps with changes shows a living, breathing city, and it means you can concentrate more on the game and the systems, making sure the experience you're crafting is a great one. It's not like there haven't been multiple games set in New York, but I guess then they'd actually have to think about the content they put in their games. Now we come to the sub-stories, a very important part of the open world. The plot, with some definite exceptions, is fairly sane. Well, slightly sane at least. The sub-stories are where these games can be at their most hilarious, touching and downright bonkers. Whether you're tracking down UFOs, trying to calm down a baby, or trying to get a dominatrix to get in touch with her softer side, the side stories are rarely boring and end up being even funnier when you consider that the person doing them is an ex-Yakuza and possibly the toughest guy in the universe. Up until recently, I'd have said the combat system was a big part of what makes them work, but I've been proven wrong about that. Yakuza Like a Dragon jettisons the beat-em-up style combat for a more old-school turn-based JRPG style, and it doesn't suffer one jot. It's even set in a completely different place and doesn't have any returning characters, and yet 100% feels like a Yakuza game. The crazy sub-stories, the weird and wonderful activities, the over-the-top main story, the stories in the city changing over time through the chapters. It's a brilliant game, and it's a brilliant Yakuza game, showing that you can jettison nearly everything from these games except the diddling about, writing quality, weird side stuff, and having a map big enough to play in but small enough to know intimately. So now you know what I'm going to say comes from a place of love. Hell, I even started learning Japanese so I could understand what the characters in these games are saying out of their own mouths. So let's start with the obvious one. The main focus of this channel is time, and dear God, these games have no respect for your time whatsoever. For starters, it's cutscene after cutscene after cutscene with no places to save, and a lot of plot exposition is done in these cutscenes, so if you want to follow the plot in any way, you have to watch them. Some cutscenes you can skip individual lines so you can still keep track, and others give you the option of just skip the entire cutscene or keep watching. and the game can put important info in either type, so you can't know for sure whether you're safe to skip. I mean, sure, if you have a Steam Deck you can suspend it like I said in my Steam Deck video, but most people don't have a Steam Deck, so they either end up missing stuff or being prisoners to their desks while this happens. The games are getting better at this. In the last couple of games, the majority of cutscenes are line by line skippable, but they can still get better. Then there's the saving. In the earlier games you can only save at a phone booth, and if you're in the middle of a mission then you, my friend, are out of luck. If you need to bow out, you return back to the last phone books you saved in. Garbage. The last couple allow you to save at your mobile phone while out in the world, but if you're on a mission, tough titty there, Chuckles. You might get a save point halfway through, you might not, and if you exit, you're back at that last save. Now I understand not wanting your players to save scum. I get it, but if I'm exiting the game, then at least save where I was so I can get back there and only have that save accessible once or something. There are systems you can use for this. Not everyone has infinite time in front of their gaming machines. There are ways around this where you can respect our time as well as stop save scumming. There have been times when I only had half an hour to play on Yakuza Like a Dragon, so I just wandered around and did some grinding for a bit. I'd have liked to have started a mission, but I knew the chances were I'd have to abandon everything I'd done, and it's just not good enough. It's a shame, and I hope the developers watch this and realise this is a problem. Here's the other one I'm going to mention, and I may regret what the comments section on this video turns into after this. Yakuza is sexist. Sexist to the point of creepy. I won't go too deeply into that here. Instead, I'll point you to a YouTube video that's been pretty exhaustive on the topic. There's definitely an argument that a lot of this is down to Japanese culture being the way it is, but the writing and the representation of some characters go way beyond that. They could do better, and quite easily really. Anyway, there, I've said it. And if you disagree, go comment on that video after watching it. Note that I said after watching it. There. I needed to get that off my chest. If I hadn't said it, I'd have regretted it. It doesn't ruin my playing the games, but it does feel really skeezy. In conclusion, the Like a Dragon Yakuza series is a fantastic series of games with great characters and its own way of doing things, but they're not without their flaws. All flaws that I believe can be fixed in time if the developers accept them as such. With Ishin coming out tomorrow, you absolutely know that's the next game I'm playing, and my next video too, which means it may be a while, but hopefully you'll stick with me. And if you want to see my report as to whether this is improved with the remake of Ishin, have yourself a nice subscribe, and I'll see you then.